when you're ready.
Okay. Well, this is a La Scala Grande, made in 1903. It has a couple minor little flaws, like it had missing a piece of ebony here and a little fret piece. It was, it's gold. What you see is gold. It's gold plated. It's through here. This is all hand carved. All the inlay on the neck here, all of that is all hand inlay. All the here is mother of pearl. All of these things are absolutely hand inlaid. They're unique to this instrument. They tried to make them unique. I think there are only 3 or 4 of these of this instrument that were made in 1903 left. I'm not sure. I bought it in 64 or 5, somewhere in there, at a pawn shop for $200, and it was just recently appraised at about $9,000, which is a nice investment. You can't beat that. The only thing I added is I put on a new head, and I put on a new bridge, and I put this little piece on right here because it helps take away a little bit of the extra ring on it, and it helps. This has on the back side here, these guys here, these are actually real ivory. And then you can see the hand inlay all the way down the neck, all the way around the back. And the only other flaw is over here, where it's just a little bit warped out. Interestingly enough, on this instrument, when they built it, they knew that on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion, it would be played without the resonator. The resonator is this piece here. That's called the resonator. And on occasion that would be removed, and the back side would be shown, so they have it all done with gold and inlay on the inside also. And they even inlaid the back side of that. Why, I don't know. But the banjo itself is really it's a 4-string, contrary to a 3-string, which, let me leave the resonator off here. Contrary to the 3-string, a 5-string, a 4-string is just like the top 4 strings of a banjo, but tuned, a guitar, but tuned like a mandolin or a ukulele. It has the ukulele tuning.
What's the notes?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I just know what it sounds like.
All right.
I never really paid much attention. E, D, G, D, A, E. G, D, A, E. I have to play them to hear them. And then it just plays. Your fingers exactly like the upper 3 strings of a guitar. So if you know how to play guitar at all, you can play one of these. Really, really, really easy.
What?
Go around.
Oh,
He plays just like a regular guitar. So Bernie, my friend here that lives here, he plays guitar. He could pick this up and literally probably play it. And it plays just really. I don't have a pick for it. So everything on it, whatever chords you know on a guitar, you can transpose them to this, which is really nice. And that made it very popular in the teens and 20s because it was different, with different sound. Bluegrass music and so forth like that uses a 5-string, which has a peg right about here, and you play in chord sequences off of that, and it's a different style of playing entirely than this instrument. But
what do you think of Steve Martin as a banjo?
oh, Martin's, the company?
Steve Martin.
Oh, Steve Martin. Oh my God, that man is so talented, unbelievably talented. He is. And creative. He actually writes music.
Really?
And people don't really think about that. They think of Steve Martin as a comic, but I would say in his heart he's a musician first. But probably as a musician he couldn't make as much money as he could as a comic. And they're both show, so he chose that. But he plays a lot of stuff today, a lot more today, and he actually has his own group he plays with. So, yeah, he's just so talented.
About Victor Borg.
Well, Victor Borg, to me, we were talking earlier about, you know, Jack Benny and all these other guys that you don't always associate with being musicians, but they really are musicians. Jack Benny is a great example of a very good classical musician, but Victor Borg, oh my God, that man! I had the privilege of meeting him in about 1962 or 3, right after I got out of the service, my second year, I think it was, of teaching at Sunflower. And he was giving a concert at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. And I wanted to go and see him, and I had a girlfriend at that time. And I asked Lynn, I said, "Do you want to go and see him?" And she said, "Oh, absolutely." And it turned out she couldn't go. And I went, and of course that left me freedom to do whatever I wanted to. And I already knew how to get in the back end of the Civic. So, because I'd played there and been around it for so many years, I went backstage, snuck backstage, and I was able to meet Victor Borg. But what stunned me about that concert was he goes through all of this hilarious, fun, insane stuff. And then he sits down and he plays 10 minutes of classical music that just makes your jaw go down to the ground. And you go, where did that come from? And then you realize, in order to do all the things he did before, he had to be that good as a musician. And that's always kind of been the way it was. And I think the way Jack Benny was, he was a very disciplined person. And the way, what was his name, the banjo player?
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, very disciplined player. And, you know, violin, banjo, piano, anything. If you got the discipline, you can do other things, you know, because that's what teaches you how to do these other things. It's part of the discipline. I think if I had any success, for instance, in race car driving when I was doing that, was the fact that I was very disciplined as a musician, as a young person. And when I get in the car, I say, look, everything's got to be on, you know, you got to check your tires before you get on. You got to check all of these things. You got to go through these things. A lot of guys don't, you know. And I didn't race other cars unless I sat up in the grandstands and logged them all in. I knew what everybody was racing. And then I would pick on the cars that I knew I could beat because I could make money on them. And if they were willing to race me blind, I was really to race them with my eyes wide open. And that's why I probably won about 70% of my races against those guys. And that's pretty good odds when you can win that much. You're going to make more money than if you lose that much. So that was always my thought.
Oh, that's great. What is that?
This unit right here?
Yeah.
That's a fine tuner. And so when I get to the general tuning of it, and I can take this and I can go down here and have little screws like at the end of it, and these levers go up and down and loosen the string, so I can go, and I can make it, raise it just a tiny, tiny bit, or lower it just a tiny, tiny bit to get it really, really accurate. Tuners, and that's where you get the and you tune it in so you got it really, and then you come back here and you tune here to get it really fine. And you can get it within really close to exactly. It's not real critical on these things because to me, I don't really care that much anymore, but for real musicians, that's really important because they want it to be perfect.
All right, yeah.
But I don't think this requires the most processing because if you're playing like a trumpet, you're playing one note at a time. You're playing violin, one note at a time. You're playing clarinet, flute, saxophone, any of those, one note at a time. Now, a banjo, you're playing 4 notes at a time. You're playing in chords. But they're groups that you know if you put your fingers in this, you're going to get that. You do this, you're going to get, and you do this, you're going to get. So each one they're actually single processes that you do. Now, if you're playing like one single pick strings, then you're doing still one note at a time. With a piano, you have to play anywhere from 1 to 10 notes at a time. That's a lot of processing. So if you're playing where somebody would normally play one note, and you're playing 10 notes, and they're playing 50 notes on a page, then you're playing 500. If you're playing chords.
Hey,
And
whenever
I'll
you're
stand
ready.
behind you and narrate.
All right, go ahead.
All right, the picture in the center was done by the lady that does my tattoos, Wendy Ramirez. It's of Charlie Mingus. I'd mentioned to her during one of the tattoo sessions that I like Charlie Mingus, and she found the picture and she decided to paint that for me and gave it to me. The banjo underneath is the banjo done by, that belonged to Joe Jackson. He was Rudy Valley's roommate, and on the inscription that's on that thing, and I don't know if you can get close enough to read that, you may be able to, it says, "Here's to the best moments of my life, spent in the arms of another man's wife, my mother," and signed by him. Now,
Hold on a second.
is
Go ahead.
okay, the trumpet is Doc Severinson's trumpet. I actually acquired it from one of my students, and she got it from her father, who got it from his father. His father worked on the set with Johnny Carson and Doc Severinson. When he retired, Doc Severinson gave him the trumpet. He in turn gave it to his son, who in turn gave it to the daughter. And because it's so dull, because it's a studio trumpet, it's not shiny, she didn't like it. And so I bought her a brand new trumpet and gave her the brand new one and took that. So that's how I acquired Doc Severinson's trumpet.
All right, go ahead.
Trombone I found at a garage sale in Pasadena. And I knew it was old when I looked at the case. And even more than that, I looked at the instruments, tarnished sadly now. I'll have to polish that up again. But it's silver, and it's not silver plated. It's a silver trumpet, trombone with a gold bell made by Busher in 1903. And upon talking with the people that owned it, I found out that the great-great-grand-uncle, or somewhere along in there, was Tommy Dorsey. So that's Tommy Dorsey's trombone. I have paperwork on that one.
There you go.
And I'm going to tell you quite honestly, I can't remember his name right off the cuff, but he is a famous saxophone player. That's him in the center. That picture was painted by a street artist in San Antonio, Texas. And while I was in Arizona, I found the soprano sax on the left, which is the Sopranino, which is the smallest saxophone made. It's actually physically smaller than a clarinet. And a clarinet that is a R13 buffet, and it has a crystal mouthpiece. And they were played by him in jazz throughout New Orleans and so forth, particularly in Birdland. On to teach dance. There's a street named after her in Downey, California called Adoree Street, Adoree. And about 55 years old, she discovered she was a pretty good painter. And so she painted this for me, and it's done in charcoal, believe it or not.
So that your mother did that in charcoal?
She designed it and painted it in charcoal.
What's your mother's name?
Adoree. Her name was Adoree King, but her dance name was Adoree Kraszinska.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
The two wooden flutes in the top are about 1890, 1880. They're 4 numbers apart, and they were bought 5 years apart. One was bought in Colorado, and the other one was bought in Los Angeles. And they're the original wood-type flutes the way they were. The next flute down is a silver flute that is just an average flute, but it's a really good one. The little one below that, the wood one, is called a fife, and it's 1785, 86, somewhere around there. It belonged to my grandfather. It was found in his possessions after he passed away by my father, and my father gave it to me. And then below that's a piccolo. It was just an average everyday piccolo, and the little teeny tiny sax hanging underneath there, one of my students gave it to me, and I thought it was cute.
Is it playable?
Nope.
What's the deal with the cornet?
The cornet was the head of the Salvation in New York City in 1925-26. And again, he lived in Charter Oak, and his son was in my class, and the father gave that to me just one day, walked into my classroom, talked to me about it, and gave it to me, and told me the history, and I thought that was pretty cool.